Welcome to the Disturb Digital Podcast, Episode 1, with celebrity chef and restaurateur Vivek Singh.
Hi, Rick.
Good to meet you, Vivek. In
Good
a
to see you
nutshell,
too.
Vivek, give us a lowdown on your story so far in the restaurant business and which restaurants you own across the UK.
Right, so I am Vivek Singh. I'm the executive chef and CEO for Cinnamon Collection. We're a collection of 5 modern Indian restaurants all across the city. My journey started here in the spring of 2001 in the August surrounds of the old Westminster Library with the Cinnamon Club. And then we've gone on and we have Cinnamon Bazaar in Maiden Lane, and we have 3 cinnamon kitchens. One in the old spice warehouses of the East India Company near Liverpool Street in the city. And we have one in the iconic surrounds of the Battersea Power Station, and one on a beautiful rooftop of the Westgate development in Oxford.
Awesome. I've known Vivek for a few years, and I've seen his profile raise over the years, as well as his restaurants have stayed relevant for nearly 2 decades. And it's thriving in tough conditions. It's survived recessions, and he's still on top of his game. Vivek, I've got to ask, now how have you managed to stay relevant and stay at the forefront of the restaurant game in London for nearly 20 years?
I think it's a very good question. I think, as you say, the trick is not just to open restaurants, but I think the bigger challenge is to stay relevant in this sort of ever-changing environment. But I think the core of it, the very basis of it, is actually to start with something that you're passionate about and that you absolutely believe and love. Sure. But after that point, then it's a question of keeping your game sort of constantly evolving through innovation, through creativity, through constantly challenging people's perception, giving your customers a new experience each time, and giving them, more importantly, a reason to return.
Sure. No, it's fantastic. And you just touched on it. What would you say has been your best way to market, or the best use of marketing tools to get more people to your restaurant and keep them coming back?
The way I look at this is, you use PR to kind of get the word out amongst newer audiences all the time. So you're forever trying to get your word out in terms of wider audiences and getting people introduced to your business, and that's what PR does. Sure. And when it comes to marketing, I look at it from a way that, anybody who has come to our restaurants, we believe in forever building our database. Because as you know, these days data is no longer the new oil on which everything runs, but it's the new soil that pretty much everything grows out of. So if you've given people a good experience and they feel good enough about you to leave their details behind, we then use that data really effectively to tell them stories and news and give them different different stories throughout the year to give them a reason to return. I think that's key.
No, you've touched on it, definitely. I mean, from a marketing point of view, when we've looked after restaurants, what we've done is, for new restaurants, we'd use paid marketing. That's the likes of Facebook ads, Instagram ads, YouTube ads, Google ads, to acquire new customers, and new customers only. And once we've acquired them, we no longer market to them on those channels through paid methods, but then we'd use email and SMS to keep them coming back, to basically get repeat custom using that. So you acquire new customers through paid, and then keep them coming back through free type of platforms like SMS and email marketing. And that we have found has been an effective method. People get it wrong and just keep hammering at the same people using paid, which you're going to burn a hole in your pocket.
That's right. Yes. Yeah.
So it's very key that for people starting up in the restaurant business, maybe that could be a strategy you could use. So it's definitely worth, and obviously look at what Vivek's done as well. You did say PR has been fantastic. So. Yeah. And having a story to tell, I think is very, very, very key. With big name restaurants going out of business, we hear them on the news. What would you say is the biggest mistake restaurateurs are making, which tends to lead them into losing business or going out of business?
I suppose the bigger challenges around big groups is that when you go beyond a certain size, you lose the ability to respond quickly and nimbly. Sure. And I think if you're taking too long to respond to customer feedback, or if you're taking too long to change your menus, for dishes that aren't being received that well, I think I think people have very low threshold of patience in terms of what they don't like.
Sure.
And I think that whatever it is about your aspect, whether it's a dish or it's a menu, it's an offering, it's a drink, that grates with them. If you aren't quick to respond to those, I think you will lose customers and you lose loyalty. So that's the big thing about, when you get to a certain size, how the biggest challenge about groups is how do you keep yourself feeling and responding to customers as individuals and not starting to look at them as big blocks.
Sure.
And every time big groups have failed to do that, I think we've found that, there's bad news in the offing.
Sure, no, that makes sense. And how have you managed that, with a team? So, you would have to employ X amount of people, managers, staff. How have you kept it where you still keep that, let's say, ownership and that, flexibility and nimbleness?
We were quite clear about this, that from the very beginning that we were not looking to expand into a massive group per se. So we like to, even the collection of 5 restaurants, we use the term collection. So it's more like a bouquet, and in a bouquet, it's okay to have different flowers and different colors and different foliage. And in that sense, that's the view we take. We don't want to be the same to everyone and all things to all people. We were quite key to understand that there are subtle differences between each of our restaurants. So the Cinnamon Club is going to be different from Cinnamon Kitchen, which is going to be different from Cinnamon Bazaar. They appeal to different audiences. They mean different things to different people, even though they all carry the same ethos of modern Indian cooking, which draws inspiration from traditional Indian cooking techniques and traditional Indian spicing, combining that with the very best local seasonal produce money can buy. You have that common ethos, but it's all reflected in different ways. So the menus are different, the price points are different, and of course the experiences in the restaurants are different. You don't just walk into any restaurant and think, oh yeah, I've been here before. Sure. Because they all have an individuality and an identity and integrity about it. And I think that is quite key.
Yeah, I mean, you've touched on that there. Is there new things you've had to do to appeal to, let's say, new audiences, millennials, from the last 10 to 15 years? How have you changed your approach?
I mean, there's a constant evolution. There's a constant ethos of innovation, of creativity, of pushing boundaries, which runs through all our menus, no matter what the price point. So that's kind of really common. But, in many subtle ways, when I started off 18, 19 years ago, we went through a phase where we thought we did not want to put things on the menu that were mainstays or staples in people's households. Because we thought, why would people want to come and spend good money in a restaurant if they can cook it at home or if they're used to having it at home? That was the ethos, the philosophy, the thinking then. But in the last 10 years, we noticed that there was a whole resurgence and revolution around people wanting to be introduced to more and more home cooking, authentic stories and authentic dishes from the subcontinent and beyond. And so, our menu just organically kind of, flew in that direction. And we introduced things that were more comfort, more from home or more authentic old dishes. And they kind of made an appearance on the menu. And that kind of thing goes on. You go through phases when people want to eat less meat and, perhaps more forgotten grains and more lentils and, vegetarian, very vegan. Veganism has been a big thing recently.
Right.
Yeah. I think vegan has been the fastest growing category last year, and it'll continue to do so. In fact, in January, we have a big promotion around Veganuary going on. I have vegan tasting menus and vegan dishes on all of our menus, no matter what the price point, all of our menus. Good. And that's one way in which you are, constantly attracting a newer audience, which may not be that well served in other restaurants. That's one thing. But also equally, you're getting those, that message out to your wider audience. You don't have to be a vegan to have a vegan dish.
True. Yeah.
You don't have to. But if you can give people that sort of experience of, let me try it once. And even if, 3 of those dishes, out of the 3 dishes that somebody has chosen, one of them is vegan, you still go some way in pushing that agenda. So veganism has been a really good one that way. Healthy eating.
Perfect. Bang on.
Healthy eating has been, more and more. And people want to know where their produce is coming from. People want to know that the ingredients have been, sourced with care, that they are seasonal, that they are fresh. And so it's important to get those key words out in the messaging in the way the menus are written. We like to tell people where their lamb is from.
Sure.
If it's Kentish, if it's Rug Valley, if it's Lake District Farmers Cooperative. We like to tell people that they're having free-range chicken or fresh halibut from the North Atlantic. And then those kind of things really build your menus and your offerings credentials significantly. The other thing I find that people have been, there has been a tremendous rise in is been allergens.
Yes.
I mean, you find more and more people, and several folds more people that have dietary requirements that may not be vegetarian for religious reasons, but have real dietary requirements. They have nut allergies, they have mustard allergies, and allergens have become a really big thing. Whilst it's been a big risk for many organizations, it's also a phenomenal opportunity to be able to have options for those people to come and use you. So it's a case of actually having your finger on the pulse to be able to see what people really need and adapt your offering to be able to meet that.
Sure. And how do you find the trends? Do you look elsewhere? Do you look to different countries and see what's going there, or do you just adapt?
No, to be honest with you, all you do is you listen to your guests.
Yeah.
And often if you're serving a large number of people, you have a fairly good idea that vegetarianism is on the rise or veganism is on the rise. There's more requirements and requests around allergen-free dishes, and you build that into your offering.
That's the key thing, quality over quantity, definitely on that. Over the last 5 or 6 years, I've started to see reviews like Google, TripAdvisor,
Correct.
Facebook have become more prominent, maybe giving people an idea how good this restaurant is. How have you managed those systems and those processes to ensure that you stay?
There certainly has been, in terms of managing feedback and sort of feedback portals and feedback sort of platforms, which have literally mushroomed over the last 10 years. It's been a bit of a learning curve for restaurants. And there was a time when people used to think, oh, well, TripAdvisor, I don't need to worry about it because that's not my clientele. It doesn't matter whether it's your clientele or not.
Sure.
If people are posting about you on that platform, then there is an onus of responsibility or to respond on those platforms. If people are posting on them, then you better be seen as engaging.
Sure.
Otherwise, you're shutting out that audience completely. And so it's been one of those things that people have invested in over the last 5 odd years. I have engaged in a guest review platform which actually compiles our feedback from all of these different sources.
Brilliant.
And presents it to us in a dashboard form, so you can see what you can't respond to everything, and it's also about understanding that you cannot make every single person from every single source happy all the time.
Sure.
However, it's absolutely fine to accept that once in a while you'll get things wrong, as long as you're being responsive, you're acknowledging the feedback, whether it's good, bad, or ugly, whatever that might be.
Sure.
I think the optics of that are more important than actually getting it right every single time, all of the time.
Yeah, definitely. I've seen business owners, when they do get a bad review, they panic heavily. But in bigger business, you do, the more chance you get of getting a, let's say, not so great review. But as you said, if you take responsibility and make sure that issue doesn't happen, or you address that issue, it's not always bad to have bad reviews.
No, it's fine. These things can happen.
Sure.
And I think it shows a more human side of the operator and the operation.
Sure.
If they're seen to be responding to both good and bad reviews simultaneously, and there is a discipline around that. And I don't think reviews are going to go away. If anything, they're going to become more and more important. But also having a sizable quantity of reviews, whatever that platform of choice might be, is a really important aspect. So I would any day pick a place that has got 5,000 reviews, and even if it's 80% satisfaction rating, over a place that has 50 reviews and all excellent. Because I know businesses and people that can actually pay for this stuff these days. So it really doesn't, it doesn't really mean if you've got 5% people saying it wasn't good, doesn't make you a bad operator.
Yeah, totally. What I've seen is you, Vivek, continue to make TV appearances. you know, the likes of BBC's Saturday Kitchen, MasterChef, ITV's This Morning. What impact does that have on the restaurant?
I think it has a huge impact, especially if you're just starting out doing that, in terms of creating an awareness. Because that kind of acquisition, you know, you go to a program that has a viewership of 3 million, you know, even if 1% of those people pick up the phone to want to come to yours, I mean, you'll be packed for weeks. So it has a wonderful impact. And not always does it convert immediately.
Sure.
Because somebody might have seen you on television doing a program now, but they may think of you to book for Christmas 6 months later. That's fine too.
Yeah.
So you don't expect an instant gratification, an instant return, but it's more about being out there and getting the word out so that you are top of people's consciousness when they're looking for an inspiration of where to go.
And let's say someone who's starting out, Vivek, how would they even go about that process without, you know, giving too much away?
No, I think a television, much like, you know, other awards and other recognitions, television is not an end in itself. It is something that, if it comes to you because of whatever you're doing is interesting and it's new and it's path-breaking, then that is more important than the television itself. Because it's a bit like Michelin stars, it's a bit like other awards. If you start off saying, no, I want an award, I doubt if you get it. You've got to pick something that you really believe in and that you really like doing. And if that's really good,
people will come to you.
Then people will come to you.
What's more important, Vivek, spending money marketing the restaurant or spending money marketing your, you know, personal brand, if you had resources?
I think depends what is more important to you.
Sure.
But from a business point of view or a restaurant point of view, it's always better to spend money marketing the restaurants.
Sure.
Because the profile and all the other stuff, it doesn't happen overnight. So it's better to invest into that through the product. And I think that is really key.
The rise of delivery services, Deliveroo, Uber Eats, I mean, is that becoming an increasing avenue of revenue for restaurants? Is it hurting restaurants? And is there a way to make it work with restaurants?
I think it's a little tricky one, because if you really want to be a restaurant, let's identify that you're in the market for people to go out. So it's like, you know, restaurants are about eating out and Deliveroo is about eating in. And I don't think, I mean, you know, it's absolutely fine if a restaurant is busy 80% of the time and not busy 20% of the time. And this is what Deliveroo say to you. They're saying, well, you know, I'm giving you that sort of, you know, extra business at a time when you're not that busy. Sure. That is great, but you can't be all things to all people. If you really want to crack the delivery market, you do not need to invest in the bricks and mortar and a fantastic design and a great location and a beautiful setting. You don't need to.
Sure.
The other thing to bear in mind is that not everything travels as well as far as a restaurant menu is concerned. So if you are really serious about delivery or delivering in the takeout market, then I think the menu design and the composition needs to reflect that. Because, you know, it needs to travel distances without losing quality or temperature or desirability and so on. So that's quite an important thing. Not all of the stuff that I do in restaurants is suitable for delivery or to be enjoyed at home. Sure. Because it's never hot enough, it's never beautiful enough. The hot isn't hot enough, the cold isn't cold enough, and, you know, that's not great fun. It's hard to get that bit right. But, you know, the beauty of going to restaurants is that, you know, you are in a glam space that you haven't had to pay for. And it's a great way of not having to worry about the cleaning up afterwards. So it is, I don't think one is going to take over the other to an extent that they'll cease to exist. That isn't happening anytime soon.
Perfect. And, you know, finishing off really, Vivek, what do you think are the top 3 things a restaurant entrepreneur needs to have to make their restaurant business thrive?
I think top 3 things. In the old days, they used to say the top 3 things was location, right? I think places like this and examples like this kind of prove to people that it's not necessarily true. great location may not necessarily be enough to sustain something in the longer run.
Sure.
And therefore, it's got to start with people, product. So you've got a product that really appeals and it adapts and it responds to people's needs, changing needs over a period of time. It's really important. Having great people to deliver your concept or your idea, another, and then if you've got the product and the people right, then it's certainly about marketing and getting the word out,
Sure.
making sure that you're supporting the business by bringing it newer audiences all the time, so that that is driving traffic to it.
Of course. Right, Vivek, social media, how has that impacted the restaurant business in the last 4 to 5 years?
I think social media is, the restaurant business generally has been slightly slow to take on to social media, largely. However, I think there are more and more restaurants and restaurant groups and operators that realize that it's almost as important as having a website or having a telephone line or
Sure.
having a booking system, and that social media is just as important. I think in the last sort of 5 odd years, we've seen a distinct shift towards storytelling through images, and Instagram has had a huge role to play in food,
Sure.
and beautiful imagery and generally a positive space for people to make those connections from. I found a lot of people getting a lot more bookings and doing a lot more selling via Instagram. It seems to work for restaurants.
Yeah.
But I think the most important thing again is for the imagery to be consistent, and then for the narrative to be one of not too much of a salesy tone of voice. And I think there are places that are doing it really well, and I think it's only going to go on the up.
Sure, makes sense. And in particular, Instagram, what you touched on, how has it changed the way you do, let's say, front-end business? That could be the plating, the front-end decor, the staff.
I think for restaurants like ours, we've always paid a lot of attention on how the plate looks.
Yeah.
Because we always believe that you eat with your eyes first.
Sure.
And so therefore it was easier for us to, from a social media desirability point of view. However, I mean, you see restaurants, more and more menus are written with Instagram in mind.
Yeah.
Dishes are created with Instagram in mind, the kind of things that will really gain a lot of traction and be shared many times over. People are using stories more and more. I mean, it's a great way of, great example and a great way of sort of getting your word out.
Sure.
But, we're also finding, there are also restaurants that are actually taking a completely different route to it. Of course, social media in general has become a lot more acceptable in restaurants, so it's okay to have your phone on the table.
Yeah.
And, and to be taking pictures in between courses and posting and all of that good stuff that goes on. But I mean, I now know of restaurateurs and restaurant groups that actually design the lighting in their restaurants so that it's more Instagrammable.
Brilliant.
And so actually the whole game is being lifted everywhere.
With Instagram in mind, I guess.
Yeah.
Makes sense. I'm seeing, restaurateurs or even venues using decor more. They'll make certain flower walls or certain areas in that restaurant be like the place where you take the picture. And that, I felt, has driven interest. I mean, there's some good companies, big companies out there that have done it well, who do the outside as well.
Yeah.
And it looks pretty mental. I'm sure it's pretty costly as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it does work. People stand outside it. They share it with their friends see which location.
Yeah, it's a bit like having a menu that gives people a reason to return, or in the first place, a reason to choose your restaurant over. It's exactly the same way for Instagram or for this whole social media sharing culture that we live in, where people need there to be a reason. It needs to be a unique location.
Gimmicky, right?
Yeah. I mean, you have a wall like that, with full of books, from hundreds of years on. It's
already there.
It's there already. Yeah, exactly.
Make it.
Exactly. You don't have to make it, but there needs to be. And if you happen to have a venue that has a light like that, or a window that really lends itself, or a flower installation, as you mentioned, or a beautiful outside space, all of these things matter.
How influential has influencers been for you to drive new customers to the restaurant?
I think a lot of our journey, because it started off pre social media age and pre PR kind of that sense. So it hasn't had a big role for us. We were already quite established when all of these fads started to. But I'm finding for my newer restaurants, for smaller spaces, and for a lot of new operators, that influencer marketing is a really effective tool. It's a really effective way of getting your word out, and there is an element of neutrality about it, because here is somebody who has an engaged audience, whether it's 5,000 or 50,000 or 150,000, but there are people that are listening to them, and if they go out on a good night out and post pictures, I think it's one way of getting in front of people's minds.
Sure. I mean, one thing I'm seeing as well is I think the public are getting, let's say, used to seeing influencers promote nearly every product these days, where it's become like they'll just promote anything if they're paid enough. So there's got to be a fine balance, I guess.
I'm sure, much like advertising and much like other things, I think this will settle down.
Yeah.
When the dust settles on this, I think there will be new etiquettes and new rules, kind of ground rules laid. I think we're already seeing, in the past, people did not have to post something as an advert.
Yeah.
So they could just get paid for it, but post it and pretend that it was them saying it. Now you see this etiquette of actually saying it's either an ad or a gift, and that's coming in. So I think much like any other civilization or society, social media is a relatively new place to be, and I think it will make its own rules as it settles down.
I agree.